Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, Cesar Espino, and today I have a special guest. His name is Jon Ostenson. He's the founder and CEO of FranBridge Consulting, a two-time Inc. 5000 company, and he's in the top 1% franchise consulting. Jon is also the author of the best-selling book, Non-Food Franchising. Jon draws on his experience as a former Inc. 500 franchise president and multi-brand franchisee in helping his clients select their franchise investments. It is my pleasure to introduce you. How are you today, Jon?
Hey, Caesar, doing great. Thanks for having me.
Good, good. So, Jon, talk to me about, before we dive into what you have going on right now, talk to me about your upbringing. Where are you originally from, and how was that upbringing for you?
Yeah, absolutely. No, based here in Atlanta, Georgia, and as we were talking about before the show, moved from Los Angeles as a kid, but it was the oldest of four kids, and my father was an attorney, but he was a self-employed attorney, and I don't know that was the best fit for him over the years. You know, in our home, money conversations were frequent, and it kind of created a little bit of a drive in me to, to kind of go beyond that. It's been really neat and latter years now to be able to support them. But that was always a thing growing up. But very blessed to have two great parents and three siblings, and went on to the University of Georgia, got out, worked in corporate America for a number of years. Very thankful for that experience, and had a great run. But always had that desire to do something a little more entrepreneurial. So I look forward to digging into that
Yeah.
with you today.
For sure. There's always that idea, when people grow up, right? As you're growing up, we have the idea of like, when I grow up, I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a police officer. Obviously you know, there was more for you, but did you ever had something in mind that you wanted to become, right? Or be, as an adult?
Well, certainly, once I realized Major League Baseball wasn't going to work out, I certainly had that dream as a child. It was really going the corporate route and finding that secure, safe job with a good income, with retirement benefits, and so in my mind, it was somewhere around finance, but I always wanted to keep my options open. So got into consulting after college and did some international work. Again, just wanted to build a resume, keep the
Yeah.
options open from I think a little bit of a scarcity mindset too. Having grown up where money was always an issue in our home, I wanted to have that secure, safe job as I perceived it, which in
Yeah.
hindsight now probably wasn't always the safest.
Right. You said something that's very critical, and not knocking anyone that's doing that, right? But you're right. I believe that there's that idea of, let me go to school, get a good education, come out, find that secure job because of the benefits, or because quote unquote is perceived as being secure, right? And there's always that, I think people feel the security of like, I'd rather have something than not have anything. But being able to go from that, right, which you were doing that, and then deciding, right, taking the action of, you know what, maybe I want to work for myself. I want to be an entrepreneur. How was that for you?
Yeah, I think that most people, and this is the type of conversation I have frequently, most people have a desire to be a business owner, to control their own destiny, to build their own empire instead of someone else's. I think that resides in most people. Some never let it manifest and never go down that direction, but a lot of people do. And so for me, I pushed it out for a while. So I'm in my mid 40s now. It wasn't until a decade ago, in my mid 30s, that I really took
Mm.
action on that desire. Part of that is, the perennial, golden handcuffs. I had done well in the corporate world, had a fancy title. It was technically a corner office I had, but was the youngest vice president in a big public company, and could have kept doing that forever. But again, had that desire, finally acted on it. My wife was supportive. It is crazy. 10 years ago, looking back, I mean, I took a significant pay cut, right, to step away, and
Yeah.
had three young kids at the time. But I felt like God opened some doors and just kind of, I felt like it was the right timing. And so I had the opportunity to step in as, I wouldn't say I jumped in full on there at the beginning. I
Right.
sidestepped, went from a public company to a private company, and but took a meaningful pay cut. And up to that point, I always thought of franchising as fast food. Never realized there are all these other industries. But through circumstances, had the opportunity to step in and lead a very large franchise system as their president. And that really was the light bulb moment where I fell in love with the business model.
Yeah. Talk about that. You're right. I mean, even myself, a lot of people think franchise, McDonald's or Panda or whatever, right? And then they think one about food, the food industry. And then the second thing that comes to mind is like they're super expensive. I'm never going to be able to get into that business. Or even, I know the UPS store, like those kind of franchise, like, man, I can see myself doing this, but it might be too expensive where I'm going to get the funding for. Walk me through a little bit of I guess the idea, right? That one, there's not just the food industry, there's other industries, but I guess more than anything, how can somebody try to get into a business like that?
Yeah, so I'll start out talking about the funding side. Just to,
Hmm.
I think that is eye-opening to your point. Um, I'd categorize franchises in kind of two different buckets. You've got the ones where you've got a physical location. Think of retail-based, customer-facing. You have it
Mm,
built out like you would in food, right?
yeah.
But that could be a gym. It could be a variety of different things. In a business like that, you're all in investment. When you look at the franchise fee and startup cost and several months of working capital, tends to be oftentimes around $400,000 or $500,000, right? Now, I've got clients that bought trampoline parks that are $4 million, but
Yeah.
most of the time you're around 400,000 or 500,000, including that working capital. However, two-thirds of our clients are getting into businesses that don't require physical locations. They're more remote, and that
Mm,
lowers the cost typically a pretty good amount. So those can be as low as $100,000 every now and then, a little bit lower. But I'd say a sweet spot 150, 200,000 all in investment is what we oftentimes see. And Caesar, it's not that everyone's paying cash. In fact, most people are not paying cash. They're putting in maybe 50,000 of cash plus an SBA loan tends to be incredibly common because
mm,
banks love the franchise model. So it's a very, they love lending to it. You can also roll over a retirement plan through what's called the ROBS program. So again, that makes it very achievable where oftentimes people don't realize, for $150,000, including my working capital, my all-in investment, I can become a business owner and I can even leverage and use an SBA loan for more than half of that.
yeah. Does credit come into place here? Like, again, never done this. Let's just say I've never done this. I don't have the best credit, but I might have a little bit of money saved up. Are people like that able to get in, or is this specifically for, a type of profile person?
Yeah, well, if you're a bank, you're going to want to lend to someone that, has a good
Yeah,
track
of
record,
course.
right? So, but that being said, we've got multiple partners that we work with. So really, we haven't run into that being a big issue. I think there have been,
Gotcha.
maybe 3 or 4 times a year we'll bump into it. But by and large, if you have a semi-decent credit, it tends to work out. But
Yeah.
see, I'll just kind of touch on, if it's okay with you, some of these opportunities, that people wouldn't think of, just the industries in these ones that are more achievable from a
Hmm.
investment level standpoint. It's things like home and property services, everything from cabinets to pool cleaning to flooring to insulation to businesses like health and wellness, different longevity modalities, within recovery modalities, to things like in-home senior care or other businesses that support the senior population.
Mm,
Or oftentimes we've had clients do really well with like youth soccer. So people are always going to spend on their kids, their aging
really? Okay.
parents,
Yeah.
their pets, right? We've done a good bit in the pet space. And then there are all these niches of like B2B services, I would call them, where it's just things you would never think about, like freight brokerage or business coaching or cost reduction analyst or public adjusters, insurance adjusters. There are all these things that, again, you don't have on your bingo card when you hear the word franchise,
Right.
but we see people getting into.
Wow. Which one do you think is the most advantageous right now for, to get in? Because, I have here in my notes, you're talking about right now, this could be a good opportunity, right, for people to invest and get into some sort of franchise.
I mean, we've never seen so much interest in franchising. A couple of years ago, I called it the COVID effect. Everyone's
Yeah.
sitting around thinking about the path they were on, and now I would call it the AI effect. A lot of people
Mm,
are saying, "Hey, I've got so many technology guys reaching out saying I'm either being asked to do more with less, or I see my job hanging in the balance, or maybe I recently lost my job." I mean, it's real what's going on out there, as we all know. And so they're saying, "Well, I want to become a business owner. I don't have $1 million idea. I don't, maybe
hmm
I you don't have the courage to just go start something new, but maybe your franchise is the right path to go. So, as far as what industry, we're seeing a lot of smart money and private equity too flowing into things like the home services space. People are outsourcing more than ever. The average age of homes is greater than ever. There's a housing shortage. There's just a lot of macro trends, and AI is not going to replace most of these home
Right.
service type jobs. And so I've done multiple pool cleaning deals recently, but you think about like the non-sexy stuff like restoration or dumpsters, things that regardless of the economy, people are always going to spend on. That's where we see the interest.
Yeah. Who do you see as buying? Like, who's the avatar, or the person that's really buying, going out and buying a franchise or getting into this business right now?
Well, I've done deals with folks as young as the early 20s to mid 60s, but I would say, here I am in my mid 40s. I'm probably the avatar right now. We see a lot of people in their 30s, 40s, 50s reaching out. And about half of them are looking to make the jump and run the business themselves as an owner operator, at least early on, then eventually replace themselves. The other half are looking to do what we call an executive model. Franchises oftentimes call it semi-passive, semi-absentee. I don't like that term. I think semi-involved is a better term.
Hmm.
The idea is that you put a manager in place day one, you continue with your day job, the manager runs the business. Um, I never want to sugarcoat that. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. It still takes involvement, and the success really comes down to having the right person running that day to day. If you've got a great incentivized operator in that seat, the franchisor can provide a lot of support to them and kind of, take some of the burden off of you. But if you don't have the right person in that seat, you're going to lean in until you do.
Got you. One thing that comes to mind, right? Even this, like a lot of people might say, "Hey, this might be risky. Like, can I actually even make some money? Like, what is the financial? I guess, and just like anything, any business, I would assume. But this is a proven model, right? Or it's already a franchise for a reason. Um, except, what will be the financial upside or possibilities by getting into a franchise?
Yeah, and certainly anything worth doing is going to carry some level of risk, right? And
Hmm.
there's a reason why you can make outsized returns in business ownership. There's a reason why the government incentivizes it from a tax playbook standpoint. Um, but that's where I like franchising because it does de-risk it to some degree, right? And so it's really across the board. We group franchising as an industry, but end of the day, it's several thousand different business models all
Yeah.
operating under that umbrella. So it really varies. But I'll just give one example. We've had 8 or 9 clients buy into this one franchise system. It's gutter installation.
Okay.
And that's about a $6 billion a year industry. You're all in investment on this opportunity is between 200 and 250,000. So let's just call it 250. And if you're running the business as an owner operator, that we've had clients do as much as $1 million in revenue in the very first year.
Mm.
Not everyone, but some have. But by end of year two, you should be at $1 million run rate. And so if you're running it at $1 million and it's kicking off about 20% to the bottom line, conservatively, some are doing more than that, then that's 200,000 per year on an initial investment of 250. That's an 80% return if you think about it that way. But what I love about franchising is you also get, again, that tax playbook. There's so many things you can do from it,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah.
So I call it a trifecta. You're building a cash flow, you're getting the tax benefits, and then you're also building an asset that one day you're going to be able to sell, most likely to another franchisee in the system. That's what we oftentimes see because a lot of people will reach out to us and say, "Hey, John, we'd love to buy an existing business of a franchise." I say, well, every now and then we do those, but for the most part, the good ones get taken by other franchisees in the system. They get first line of sight into anyone that may be selling their business. So, again, call it the
Gotcha.
trifecta because it's
Yeah.
that multi-pronged approach.
Yeah. Talk to me about, obviously this sounds good, but talk to me about the pros and cons. Because obviously, what are the pros and cons of doing a franchise versus, hey, I have the means, but I want to just do my own business. I want to be open up my own company per se, right? Versus going through a franchise. What's the pros and cons?
Yeah, I'll start out with the cons. End of the day, you are paying a royalty stream back to the franchisor. It tends to be 6, 7, 8% of revenue. Um, and not every franchise is created equal. You've got great ones out there where they're worth every penny of that.
Hmm.
You've got others that aren't providing the support that's worthy of that. So that's where we come in and try to help them identify the right
Gotcha.
opportunity.
Yeah.
But you are paying a royalty. You may be limited to the territory in which you purchase, right? You can't expand
Mm.
beyond that without acquiring additional territories. Um, you know, in theory, another franchisee could hurt the reputation of the brand. We don't see that too often. There's usually guardrails in place around that. and some people are too entrepreneurial. Franchising is not the right fit for everyone. Some people want to put their thumbprints all over.
Yeah.
They think they're the smartest guy in the room, no matter what room they're in. We definitely see some of
Yeah.
those. But on the flip side, and I truly believe that franchising is a better path to business ownership for most people. You've got a proven model, you've got a playbook. Day one, you're stepping into marketing that should be somewhat optimized because they've launched this business elsewhere. They know what marketing works. You've got a technology stack that's put together. You don't have to go figure it out. It just allows you to kind of start on third base. You also have a franchisor on the sideline that's supporting you and your team. And this oftentimes gets overlooked, Caesar, but it's kind of a built-in mastermind. You've got all these other franchisees that are living the same thing day in, day out, learning from each other, exchanging best practices. So it just allows that shortcut, a true shortcut to success.
Yeah.
And when you think about expansion, I think of clients of mine that have come back and bought multiple franchises or they've started acquiring other franchisees in the system. There's a lot of optionality that franchising gives you when you think about the path forward.
Got you. Now, one thing that really, thinking about it and just going into this, like even if I wanted to get into a franchise, like me being new, right? Would I need to know somewhat of get educated on that industry? Like, let's just say I'm gonna go into, I don't know, home renovation type of franchise, right? Do I need to know how that functions? Is there like I guess my question to you is, do we need to get educated before we get into something, or how does that work?
Great question. In most cases, no. There are some businesses out there that do require some previous experiences in that
Okay.
industry. Most of the time, and probably 80 or 90% of our clients get into industries that not only do they not have experience in, but they never would have thought of on their own, right? And that's fun to expose them to these ideas out there. But no, you're really leaning into the franchisor in most cases to train you on the industry. What people do bring is a skill set, right? And so, what skill sets are needed to be a successful franchisee? Well, it's the same as any other business. You've got to be halfway decent with people, right? Someone that people want to work with and work for. And secondly, you've got to have the humility to follow a system.
Mm.
Again, not everyone is willing to follow a system. A good franchisor is still going to let you innovate and try new things. That's where the best ideas oftentimes come from. But back when I was president of Shelf Genie Franchise System, we had 100 franchisees. Our best performers were halfway decent with people, and they were willing to follow the system and not try to go outside the lines too far. Those were our best performers.
Wow, that's huge. I think that's huge because again, if you don't have to have, for the most part, uh, some sort of experience and you can step into something, right? That can potentially bring you some good profits, as long as you follow the system and you go through that. I think that that's very advantageous because you're right. I mean, even if I have an experience in a particular sector, or industry and I want to start my own business, that's still more risky than, in my opinion, than doing this. I think this is pretty good. And I see here in my notes that you see a lot of real estate investors that tap into and try to get into the franchise world.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of synergy with real estate investors. Probably
Mm.
half of our clients are more invested, and I personally do too. I think it's an all of the above approach. I think real estate has a place in your portfolio. I think business ownership does.
Right.
Both are very tax advantageous, but in some cases in different ways. With real estate, so I think that the mindset there is in a lot of cases, let's make this as passive as possible. Again, business ownership isn't passive, but if you put the right operator in place, it can be pretty hands off over time. But with real estate, also just from an industry standpoint, we see a lot of real estate investors gravitating towards things like the property services genre, services they may already be using for their rentals. They're like, why don't I just do this for myself? Maybe I provide property management services. We've had clients do really well in
Mm.
franchises, a lot of real estate brokers as well. And so I think it's an industry standpoint. I think it's a approach from a tax standpoint. But we're also just seeing macro trends of, the real estate market's tough. I mean, it's been a
Yeah.
tough couple of years out there. You've got housing shortages, less deals are happening, interest rates are high. And these real estate investors are saying, where else can I get a tax advantaged alternative investment with a potential good yield and be a little more hands-on than just something totally passive? So,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of synergies.
I love that. One thing that comes to mind, like you're working at a company, right? You're working yourself literally to death, I think, to eventually retire and have, hopefully, either retirement plan or 401k or something of that nature, right? And then I see it, at least from my perspective, if I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I'm going to get into a business to where not only am I building for, retirement, but I'm actually building, and I want to get into in that residual income, right? Right, month over month residual income. Can a franchise provide that, that opportunity to an extent where you can kind of, obviously once you get the business going, right, be hands off and have that residual income month in, month out?
Yeah, and it just comes down to having a good operator in place. I'll never call it passive, but again, you can make outsized returns because it's not passive. There's some involvement, and I'll just use this case study, Caesar. A client of mine, Nathan's the largest franchisee of 2 million a truck, operates in 12 markets now. Well, he started with one, and over time bought other franchisees in the system, and has built this up to $45 million a year business. The guy's in his early 40s. What's really cool is every year or two he comes to me and he says, "Hey, John, I'm ready for the next franchise, another brand because I've got a young guy or gal in my organization I want to promote that's proven themselves." And he'll give them a good bit of equity to go run this next business. And he's been pretty hands off because, again, he had good operators in
Mm,
place. Now, a lot of our clients are not that far along, but they're
right.
on the trajectory where maybe they've got a couple of different businesses and they can now be more and more hands off because they've got proven people that are highly incentivized to go be successful.
Yeah. Talk to me about how do people find you, number one? And number two, what is the vetting process, or how do you decide to essentially this is a good fit that, for you to work with somebody?
Yeah, first off, it's entirely free to work with us. We get a
Okay.
referral fee from the brands on the back end when a placement happens. It's just like a real estate model, and I serve the role
Mm,
of a real estate broker. So nothing gets passed on to our clients. Great, clean model. And I'm affiliated with IFPG, which is the largest franchise brokerage in the country. We work with over 600 companies that are looking to expand, and we're constantly adding to those. And yeah, end of the day, I'd say financially, if you don't have at least 100,000 net worth, it's probably not the right time to get into business ownership yet. That's
mhm,
something to shoot for. But if you're at that mark, then there are a lot of opportunities that we could start looking at. So, no, come out to our website, franbridgeconsulting.com, FRAN bridgeconsulting.com. Share your email address. My assistant will then reach out to you with a link to download our book, Non-Food Franchising. Would love to share a free copy with all of your listeners, either the
Thank you.
PDF or audio version, or you can buy this on Amazon, and all the proceeds go to Hope International, a great nonprofit that we support. But it's a very readable book, about 90 pages, pack a lot of content in there, really help you understand franchising 101, as well as share some case
Mm.
studies and talk about how franchising compares to starting your own business that's not franchised versus buying an existing business. We talk about the pros and cons of each. So I think it could be really informational for your listeners.
Yeah, definitely. And you just answered that. I was gonna ask you about, more or less what was the book about. So that anybody that wants to get into franchising, this will give them a good foundation of what that it all entails and how you can get into the business, right?
Yeah, we talk about the funding side of it. We talk about different industries that we see, out there in franchising. But no, we've sold thousands of copies as well. Again, all the proceeds go to a great cause, but most people have read it by the time we get on the phone. So I think it's a really good kind of dip your toe in the water first step. And
Gotcha.
certainly, if there's interest there, I'd say let's jump on a call. Again, entirely free to work with us. I love being, I've helped several hundred people step into business ownership in recent years. Absolutely love helping people identify the top opportunities in their market.
I love that. I love that. And are most of your franchises are they all US based or they could be worldwide based?
Yeah, so it's US and Canada based.
Gotcha. Okay.
We'll do a lot of placements in Canada as well, but yeah, we try to keep it tight. And once you get outside of those bounds, the franchising just looks very different.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, sounds good. John, you definitely have a pretty good model, but I'm always intrigued, right? People get into this position or get that far in life with having, in my opinion, residuals or not residuals, rituals, like Tony Robbins would refer to them, right? Rituals or habits or things like that. Talk to me a little bit about your own personal aspect. What do you do on a day-to-day basis to kind of get you up and going? And making sure that you're moving the needle.
Yeah, well, my kids get me up and going, and I'm driving them to school every morning. But there's really the longer I live, the more I've structured my life around a framework that I've created. And you've probably heard of similar things, but I call it the 5 Fs:
Hmm.
faith, family slash friends, finances, fitness, and franchising, which for some people are
Yeah.
just business. But really, the way I think about my year and how I set goals in the quarter, and then bring it back to my day end of the day, I'm thinking through those five lenses of how did I move the ball
Mm,
forward in each of those areas. It's great when you can combine two of those. So if I'm, exercising with my 14-year-old son, or yesterday I was at a golf tournament with my 14-year-old son, as an example, I'm getting some fitness plus family. I love
yeah, for
doubling up
sure.
and find those little hacks. But no, everything throughout my day, I'm thinking through those lenses. Did I move the ball forward? Am I leaving anything
Mm.
uncovered? And it's been a helpful mindset for me.
Yeah, I love that. My last question for you is, for the people that are listening to us and or watching us, if they're going through any challenge, whatever challenge that might be, what is one thing or a few things you can say to them so they can start overcoming that challenge?
Beyond just the normal hang in there, right?
Yeah.
Something that has helped me throughout my life is the idea that activity breeds activity, and I always encourage people. I think it's easy to sit on the couch and think about things, and there's a time for that, right? But if you don't know the right direction, I found if you start moving to option A or option B, then option C usually comes out of left field. So I think that an object in motion stays in motion. We all know the gravitational force side of it, but get active, start moving, and that's when good things start coming your way.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you, John, for all you had to share. Any last minute things you want to share before I let you go?
No, appreciate you having me, Caesar. Again, passionate about what I do and love exposing people to the top opportunities around them, and would love to help any of your listeners.
I love that. Well, thank you, John, for being here. And for the rest of you guys, do me a favor. Please go ahead and connect with John. Send him a quick message. Give him your email address. Go and download that free ebook that he is providing for you to get into this business. And then I'll see you guys at the next episode of Your Corner Accounting Podcast Show. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.